I think we might try to get started well, fairly well on time. Dan didn't do me as well with the title of his talk, so I didn't get a chance to prepare a long introduction like I did for Ken Carpenter. The recent travels, the best that I can come up with would be or travels with Ziggy and Uwe. Is that part of it? Part of that. And I'd like to say that Dan came to this faculty 7 or 8 years ago. Which was it, Dan? 7 years ago. And he came from Zurich, sight unseen, and it was a very lucky happenstance for us. He came sight unseen, but extremely well recommended from the Polytechnic in Zurich, where he'd been teaching. And he was teaching there with, alongside Werner Haker, I think, was teaching at that time, who's just been on our faculty here. Before that, he had taught at the University of Kentucky. Before that, he'd been a student, a graduate student at BPI. Before that, he had graduated in architecture at Auburn University in 1964, and along the way, he had worked in some very fine offices around the country, including Curtis and Davis in New Orleans, where he worked on a variety of projects, including one of their prisons for which they're experts. Dan has brought a great background of practice to our faculty and has brought a great amount in the recent years of energy research, and we're very happy to introduce to you today Dan Woodfin.
The slides that you're about to see were taken in the last 4 months. There are a series of slides that begin in France, go down through Switzerland, into Austria, up through Germany and Eastern Germany into Berlin. Side trip, several side trips when we came back at northern Indiana, the Indiana Round Barns, some Frank Lloyd Wright houses in Kankakee, Shakertown at Pleasant Hill, Kentucky. I'll provide narrative for some of the slides and just factual data for other slides. In putting this program together, I considered a variety of different approaches for handling the commentary, but finally settled on an approach which is experimental. On the basis of some scant knowledge of and an interest in haiku, I made a decision to try to structure my comments within the rules of haiku. Haiku is a form of writing in which there's a great condensation of content, basically into a 3-line format of 5, 7, and 5 syllables. I made the decision, I'm glad I made the decision. It's really a wonderful discipline for clarification of thought and clarification of language, and because of a personal affection for brevity and conciseness. The haiku tradition is very old, its roots beginning in the 8th century, and is in part a manifestation of a Zen philosophy, in which there is a significant reaction to reality, but one which could be pinpointed and which must be pinpointed, and which brings about with it a wealth of association. In fact, in haiku, the source must be pinpointed. The haiku poet Basho presented clear, strong, simple, and instant analysis from a single point of view at a single point in time, and in accord with a Zen attitude that experience or reality is a series of points in time, an infinite series. And contrary to some of the analytic types of work in which there's a great base of material presented, and on the base of that great amount of material, a single point is arrived at. Rather, haiku begins with a single point and on the basis of association leads outward and grows outward to other understandings. Another aspect of haiku that I like very much is the directness of it. And in the work of Basho, when Basho looks at an onion, he calls it an onion. When he feels an indistinct, unnameable emotion, he says so. He does not tolerate vague language. Simile and metaphor are frowned upon in haiku as being efforts at cleverness. Directness, it cannot be repeated often enough, tends to prohibit cleverness and false intuition. Paradox, another aspect of haiku, the complement of directness. A paradox is a statement seemingly absurd, yet in fact true, resulting from the inability of words to express two things simultaneously. Again, an Eastern idea that within realities of things are very often or usually composed of conflicting ideas, conflicting notions, conflicting qualities that aren't to be overlooked but are to be considered as part of the reality. As I worked on this, my ambitions were greater than my abilities, and I frequently asked myself the question, have I in fact written any haiku in this process? And I don't know if I have or not. I'm not at all discouraged by that, though, because the discipline of haiku is really a wonderful discipline, and it's something I probably will continue to do the rest of my life because I really enjoy it, and because it's a good tool. It's a good tool for looking at things and understanding things. And whether it is successful as haiku, whether it actually is haiku, I can't say, and I'm not really terribly concerned about that right now. But it gave me an opportunity to understand some things I like very much in a different way, and I did it for that. Okay, let's begin. Slide. Tucson, Arizona, the desert, spring, 1978. In the emptiness, the cactus needles protect its precious water. Spring thunderstorm, watering the flowers on the desert floor. Tucson, U.S. Air Force Base. Squadrons of death and hope crystallized in the hot, dry air. B-47s and Hueys, now propellers and hydraulic lines, sold by the pound. Tucson, San Xavier del Bac, 1783, 1797. Montmortier Abbey, France, 12th century, Westworks. Colmar, France, Little Venice. Fagersheim, France. The farmhouses are crowding about the street and yet walling it out. Fagersheim, an old farmhouse with tobacco drying in the attic and the barn. Strasbourg, France, the Vauban Barrage. Vauban's River Gate, Wall, Portcullis and Bailey, and Towered Passage. Strasbourg, the canals and locks, connecting and dividing the old quarter. Strasbourg. Medieval structures visualizing the stress lines in carpenter's craft. Strasbourg Cathedral, 1439. Zurich, Switzerland. Housing estate. Hans Brunelli, architect, 1923. Gravel floor and hard edge. Row houses repeat their cadence. Gable, door, and window. Could you focus the left projector, please? Thank you. Same housing estate. The garden court. Green gates disclose narrow paths with transparent walls, ordering the chaos. Could you focus the left projector, please? Neubühl, housing estate, architects, Hans Hafele et al., 1932. Idyllic gardens, superimposed over mechanistic forms. Neubühl. Transparent walls embracing gardens, sunshine, and fresh air. The Wohnung is free after a 12-year wait. An alpine village in Austria. In a vast landscape, houses huddled together, hay sheds dotting the fields. mountain encounter, Kitzbühler Horn, Austria. A precipice and a gentle push from the horns of a curious goat. Could you focus? You can. Feldkirch, Austria, Marktstrasse. An arcade shelter within a marketplace, within the fold of a mountain. Kitzbühel, Austria, a Baroque chapel. A cornerless and ceilingless chapel, sitting alone. Salzburg, Austria, medieval quarter. Vertical spaces, meandering narrow streets, gradually unfolding. Salzburg, Altes Hospital in Monksburg. Salzburg, Franciscan Church, 15th century choir. Vast, stark columns touch an undulating zone, neither ribs, tisserand, or lierne. Salzburg, the Baroque city, the Baroque squares. Severe urban spaces, separate yet connected by formal portals. Schloss Hohensalzburg, behemoth of the Monksburg and dealer of death. Hidden eyes wait to unleash the gravity's fury at each portcullis. Berlin. Union of German Bookbinders, Max Taut, architect, 1925. Housing and light industrial, bush-hammered, reinforced concrete frame. Berlin. Unité de Habitation, Le Corbusier architect, 1957 through 58, a vertical garden city. Berlin. 4 single-family houses, Richard Neutra and Erich Mendelssohn architects, 1923. Berlin. Uncle Tom's Hütte, housing estate, Bruno Taut, architect, 1926 through 1931. A model housing estate, typical streets with facades differentiated by orientation. Berlin. 2 international-style houses side by side, Vasily, Lukart, and Anker, architects, 1928. Berlin. A duplex, Eric Mendelsohn architect, 1922. Berlin, Feminoplast, Hans Bielenberg, architect, 1928. Berlin, Pissoir and Public Park, Dayton architect unknown. Prefabricated iron panel construction, skylighting, and gas light. Berlin, war damage. On the left, an unused rear portion of the Italian consulate. In the center, a bunker. And on the right, bullet parks. The Berlin Wall. There are several walls, not just one. The wall cuts through urban fabric, field, and forest. There are two prefabricated reinforced concrete walls which define a zone. Within that zone are anti-personnel chain-link fences and coiled barbed wire snares and concrete anti-tank devices. Landmines are buried in the sandy stretch. Guard towers are positioned in regard to visibility and firing accuracy criteria. Slightly visible are the more frequently positioned cabins for guard dogs, the guide wire each dog is tethered to running parallel to the wall, and faintly visible to the eye the paths worn by the dogs pacing back and forth along these wires. The Berlin Wall was created by East Germany to keep out undesirables. The photographs were taken from towers erected near the walls by the West Germans so that undesirables can see what they're missing. Downtown Berlin. Bamberg, Germany. Bamberg Cathedral, 1215 through 1285. Romanesque style, 4-tower, 2 apse type. Bamberg, Germany. St. Martin's Church, 1681 through 91, Baroque style. Northern Indiana, round barns, some photographed in the rain. Kankakee, Illinois. Hickok's house, Frank Lloyd Wright, 1900. Built at the same time as the Bradley house next door. The Bradley house, Frank Lloyd Wright, 1900. Some historians point to this as the first Prairie House. Kentucky, near Danville, farmhouse. Pleasant Hill, Kentucky, Shakertown. Typical buildings constructed in the 1820s. Communal hall and dormitory, 1824. That's it.